We want to give you a nice warm welcome to our webinar, The Impact of Digital Transformation on GIS Data and Spatial Solutions. In just a minute, I'll hand it over to Colin, who's going to lead today. But I want to just do a little bit of housekeeping. So we will have a couple of polls during this webinar. So kind of keep watch of your screen and be ready to jump in and interact. And with that, I will go ahead and pass it over to you, Colin, and we can get started on today's topic. Welcome in, everybody.
Hello, everybody. I'm Colin Hobson, CEO of Spatial. Okay, so we'll get started. What we try and do with our webinars is we alternate between product stuff and industry stuff. This is just a broader look at digital transformation in the realm of GIS data and spatial solutions. As CEO, it's sort of my responsibility for looking at the vision, where we go, where's the industry, and that sort of stuff. So these are just some comments. I'll run through various aspects, and we'll take it from there. And we'll have time for some discussion as well, because we appreciate feedback. So this topic of digital transformation is much larger than just GIS, obviously. The entire industry and everything that's touching our lives now, that's ramped up. It's a huge thing. I know AI is one of those, is a major impact, not only on the digital transformation, but how we interact with all things digital and what we can do with that. I'm not really going to spend a lot of time on AI. We've actually done a different webinar on that before, but obviously it's clearly changes the way we use data, the way we capture data, the way we understand data, and in fact, the way we interpret data and interpret AI itself. So what I'm going to look for is digital transformation. It's not just new software. It's not just digital technologies. It really impacts everything within a business. It fundamentally changes how we operate. And so this is really where we're at. But our focus isn't on all of that. We're just going to look primarily at GIS. And so for GIS, it all starts about building on the data that we have, but also involves the workflows and moves way beyond any kind of paper-based or PDF processes. It also requires that we embrace connected, intelligent systems. So once we have that data, and the interesting part is GIS, in my view, has always been a contributing technology, a contributor of data, and a support system within an organization. In other words, we touch multiple places and parts and functions within the organization, and as such, with digital transformation, we play a key role. It's not necessarily the most pronounced one, but certainly can impact a lot of different areas. And so connecting with other systems, enhancing decision-making, boosting efficiency, and driving innovation all tie into GIS data and solutions within any organization. The other thing is there is the spatial component. So there's not only just getting data available, but obviously for us, spatial data is all about, and one of our focuses in the year moving ahead is really the right data in the right form at the point of need, whether that is mobile, whether that's just some dashboard, whether it's web, whether it's editing, whether it's tying into an integrated system, whether it's putting a set of maps or reports or feedback within any kind of application. That's really where we're headed. And we see that as a key part. So digital transformation in GIS, key player. And so let's drill into that just a little bit more from that perspective. So here's the base of this. Is probably a diagram you might have seen in the open spatial stuff and various other organizations as well. But it's not just technology we're looking at. It's also people, how organizations are structured, what the culture is. Is it a double check everything before you capture it, or is it capture it and then double check any of those things? It's getting a little help from my support team there. The other thing on GIS is there's other stuff, right? The digital transformation changes, governance. How do you approve things? What's long-term sustainability? And that also includes how we process and use the data in GIS itself. So I'll be focusing a little bit on these basics. So in terms of GIS, it's all about data, but really we want to go way beyond that. We don't want to, focus on that completely. There's also data qualities. All of the digital transformation and the value of the data we have is dependent on the quality. You can't really do any of the higher level things unless you have fairly complete and high level quality of data. So this is all a function of building out that sort of tier within the context of the bigger industry changes. So moving along, let's just take a little look at the folks online. We have quite a few. So this is sort of a question just to get a handle on how far along do you estimate, personal decision, nothing official. How far along is your organization with only accepting digital data? So PDF doesn't count because that's mostly analog, but full on digital data. Where are you on that scale from sort of 0 to 100? Yeah, so there we go. We got a range here of not a lot, somewhere in the middle, and moving forward, where all data is digital. And I'd like to hope that some of those moving forward are customers of ours. And by the way, you'll only see one product slide. This is not a product pitch per se. Obviously, we have products that do touch in this arena, but it's really just a broader industry thing. So let's start with that first here. That's integrating data from disparate sources. There's a whole lot going on at the moment within the industry we're in. And not only IoT, which is usually often real time, but there's all sorts of sensors. There's GPS, there's drones, there's reality capture, field capture stuff, photos, trends, monitoring. There's inputs from data feeds across other groups, and really ties in with being able to connect with APIs and web services, and pulling together a lot of things that may be pertinent to whatever your particular role is. So this is something we have to deal with. GIS, like other industries, has to deal with these sorts of things. It's foundational, and really what we want to do is make sure that location specifically, and any of the asset information, particularly in the GIS, that's all provided in the format and form where needed moving forward. So that's sort of the disparate sources part of that. The one thing about that is quality. Ensuring accuracy, consistency, and completeness, that just doesn't go away. Okay, it actually becomes more mission critical because poor quality data is going to come out later on when you're doing a model or analysis, or you're trying to work with that information. It's just going to come up and become a downfall. And so my view is this entire thing is all built on data and the knowledge of the quality of data. So we started building in data quality as a measure within our products. You can go in and update that sort of stuff. And we're really laying a foundation. So as one moves forward, you sort of have an idea of how accurate this information may be. So you need to have things like validation rules, QA processes. Those need to be known, documented, and built out through the organization. So I see a lot of organizations, the executive teams are really full on digital transformation, but actually there's also a ground level change that needs to get done just on hands on the ground or boots on the street or whatever you want to call it. But the people responsible for pulling in data need to be enabled to do that in a digital, repeatable way. Flagging inconsistencies, picking up stuff early in the phases, whether that's building or repairs or maintenance, it doesn't really matter. You've got to start pulling that together from different sources and checking that everything ties together. And then once you're getting that going, you're going to be able to do much better work with that. So you need solutions for validating and automating, for example, plans and surveys. Right here, you're going to get a poll. And so one of the questions is, does your organization have an automatic or have the ability to do automatic validation before you accept any incoming data? Are you actually checking it digitally at least? But is that actually happening? Because that's sort of the door, that's the gateway to getting good quality and repeatable data, because there is so much info that we're just not going to be able to deal with it. But this is also useful information for us as an organization. Obviously, we've spent a number of years building out just one little piece of that puzzle. But yeah, so this is interesting. So there's still work to be done here. And because it's broad and multiple data sources, there's, varying inputs. But thanks for that. Yeah, that rings true as far as the inputs we've had so far. So this is the one product slide. Obviously, one of our products is ACDC. And the reason I raise it here is it is actually a full digital from submission of the data all the way into your GIS or your asset management system. And so it impacts all of these pieces. So right from creation, right across into wherever you want it in a fully customizable way. So this, from our perspective for ASCON plans and data from that, is an absolute tool that's a no-brainer for automating something that's really been dominated by multiple standards, PDFs, and a whole lot of things that recreate the need to go and recapture this into GIS, just basic stuff. And so it solves that and really enhances and puts in guarantees of data quality. So if you've not seen that or you're not using it, it's one way that really impacts GIS in terms of input data from any kind of submittal or ASCON that you're getting coming in. So take a look at that. And I could go on and on about that, but I just mention it because for us, this is something we have changed in the GIS industry. Others obviously do varying ways of achieving that, but we think ours is pretty comprehensive. Operations and maintenance is probably where digital transformation has taken off. Things like work orders, job scheduling, a whole lot of planning, keeping track of quality, quantities, and also scheduling that works, scheduling maintenance, all of that, and having a plan for that is one way. I think actually digital transformations is way ahead. My view is it's only as good as the data coming in and being supported. And I think GIS is an absolute foundation within this. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time going over operations and maintenance and digital transformation because I think that's really our whole webinar in and of itself, but it's absolutely critical. But I think GIS is also critical within this, and often those groups are paired up and work together. So I'll just do a poll there to check whether my assumption is correct or what I've been reading. How far along do you think your organization is with digital transformation in the operations and maintenance arena? So, are folks scheduled on, say, tablets or their phones? Do they get updates along the way? Can they be rescheduled? Can work be, obviously schedules set up and then transformed digitally, or are you still clocking in on essentially somewhat analog mechanisms within and communications within organizations? So this one I thought we would be way ahead on this one. That's interesting. Okay. So fairly similar to the last one in terms of the results. So appreciate that. So there's a bit of work to be done there. But once again, without good data, this doesn't really get there. And so changing the app or changing the data workflow is still not going to solve the data part of that. All right, insights and decision making. So this is the wonderful world of smoke and mirrors demos. No, I joke. But this is where analytics comes in. And once again, it's all built on data. So for management and for insights and decision making, digital data becomes a strategic asset. And it really is critically important. So building out things like clean, connected, and current information in place, GIS becomes even more valuable. It really can enable things like predictive analytics, performance monitoring, planning, long-term asset planning, contributing to asset management, all of that stuff. Just huge piece, and it's a really quite exciting time for us in the industry to be involved in that. Also, there's other stuff like data-driven planning, risk mitigation, service delivery, responsiveness, dashboards, spatial analysis as well, contributing to planning. One of the things we've done is added AI into Enlighten, so you can literally just type in a question like, show me all of these things that have that attribute that haven't been touched in whatever time, and up pops a map. And you didn't even have to be a GIS specialist. You didn't have to understand how to drive the selection and the query and the filter and the whatever to get there. A lot of stuff in that you can guide. And moving forward to the cloud, we as a company have pushed one source of truth for years and years and years. And in fact, have put everything in one database from the GIS perspective, one schema. But that's changed. Now we actually look at one source of where to get the information and have it rendered in the form that is usable. That's moved from web to cloud. And with cloud integrations and APIs, that's the future of the source of truth is going to be your touch points that you get, and those should be delivered within an integrated solution across the board. So looking forward to that as one moves forward. The other part of this whole digital transformation is it goes beyond reactive management. This is really with good data and good processes and the technology we already have in place. There's no real reason that I can see. Of course, I'm going to ask you in the poll, but where organizations cannot start taking a proactive, inside-led approach to decision-making, management, planning, operations, and working on that perspective, which then leads us to a last thing, and that is how far along is your organization on using digital data for the insights and decision-making? So take a look at that and sort of give it, this is just your guess, right? So I think we're looking a little better here. We were getting more folks saying, yeah, it is being used. My question, of course, is, well, tie that back to the data quality question and let's see how we're doing there. But Of course, you can make allowances for poor data quality or incomplete data, make some assumptions, which we've been doing for years. Okay, let's move along. So there are, obviously, I've focused on the whole data piece, and we've touched on some contexts within, modeling out and operations and maintenance, etc. But there are much broader aspects. Technology and innovation. The AI thing will have, I believe, a big impact. Whether we learn how to qualify and test what AI is giving us is one thing. In technology, AI obviously has a play in how we can get the technologies to you, and there's innovation on that side. There's also cost and return on investment. At the end of the day, organizations cannot change overnight. They can change the infrastructure, but the ongoing processes, the reality of the matter, as far as I can see, is the people and the culture takes time. It may even take somewhat different generations, or at least openness to using different ways of doing things. There's also strategy and governance. There's a lot there in terms of how data can be shared or not shared, whether you can learn from other organizations or whether they're going to be restricted from sharing information with you, and whether you'll be restricted from sharing information or getting to the kind of information you need for making decisions. So data, I see it in the middle. And yes, there's software and solutions and stuff around that. But bigger picture, broader aspects, there's future proofing. How can we really build out systems that are self-checking, systems that where we not only get a result, but we actually look at, well, does that make sense? Can we actually get it to go figure it out? So there's a lot more to this. I fully respect that and realize that. But that's it there. So I'm going to ask one last question, and that is, in short, in digital transformation, from where your organization is now, where do you go, and how's that moving along, and how does one speed it up, and should you even be speeding it up? Maybe sometimes the knowledge in people's heads is more valuable than something captured digitally. Those are questions. Let's ask you one last thing. So here I'm going to ask you to do a little different. What I'd like you to do is put one word, if possible, but one short phrase. What do you see as the biggest challenges to digital transformation in GIS? This could be in your organization, could be across the board. This is sort of to check whether I was, in fact, anywhere near the center of this or not, but could just type it in. So these would be items that came up. New processes, so change, big deal. Legacy systems, so if you've got some, old in-house systems and that data is key to other things, how do you then get this new stuff to tie in? It's just a challenge. It's not impossible. Data management, dealing with data that's all over the place. Data quality, the skills to actually do all of this. Who does it? Just aligning with what your organization wants. Cross integration, so that is a big thing. I think with the cloud-based APIs, which have kind of grown out of the web stuff as well, and platforms, there's a whole change where you don't have a single source of truth. This is the data of record, and that's that. Typically, a question gets answered by data in multiple places, different data that contributes to the overall answer. So integrating from various sources of truth and getting that there. Legacy data is a problem. Budgeting, I guess, cost budget, and just acceptance. Is this technology really going to make that much difference? How do you actually drive it? How do you deploy it, etc.? So those are the things that came up. And so, this is just a little summary of some thoughts, some aspects, things that we've been looking at. And I thought we'd kind of put it together and just have a regular discussion.
Awesome. Colin, well, people kind of type in their questions if they're thinking of those. If you want to jump to the next slide, I can kind of just do a couple quick updates. We just wanted to give a little heads up of kind of what's next with Open Spatial. So we do have a couple new webinars that we're about to announce. If you do not get our webinar invite via email, we've left a QR code that you can scan, or there's also the link, and I'll go ahead and throw that in the chat. But you can go ahead and sign up for that. That way, about a week before any webinar happens, we tend to send out an email just so it's communicated what it is, topic, how to register, all of that good stuff. So that's the first announcement there. And then the second one down, you might have noticed that we tend to do a blog before we tend to do the webinar discussion and kind of go a little deeper. So if you would like to get more of our recent publications on topics like today's webinar delivered directly to your email, if you create a free account at our website, openspatial.com, as soon as we publish anything new, you will get a direct email as soon as that is published. So I'll hand it back to you, Colin.
Okay, thanks, Brett. If you do have questions, just shoot us an email. There was a lot A lot of research on this stuff. There's a whole lot of ways where you can measure the stage of your organization's digital transformation, things like that, stuff that we've come across. So just thought I'd mention some of that. If anybody has any questions, we could take those. If not, then we will call it. And thank you very much. Appreciate it. Have a wonderful day ahead, and I'll hopefully see you at a future webinar. Thank you.